Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Bockelman. I'm an architect on the Solutions and Innovation team at Dell Boomi. Today's session is going to cover data preparation for new hire insights. So to walk through the architecture, let's first look at the business problem. Let's say I'm an onboarding specialist at Boomi, and I want to ensure that newly hired employees are effectively engaging with other team members. We use Slack as communication tool, which tracks constructive communication between employees, but it's difficult to surface these Slack message insights per each new hire in Boomi's onboarding solution. So this also covers some data quality problems as well. Slack and new hire information live in disparate systems, and joining these data sets together to surface accurate insights requires solving data management challenges, such as data inconsistency. Think of a new hire, they could use different name aliases, or maybe their name in Slack changes, which can affect system user provisioning and profile management because that data is subject to change. It's not consistent across the different systems that require that new hire employee information. And then there's also data incompleteness. New hires could use different email addresses, or maybe they were provisioned with a different email alias that they're using as their primary email for a system login. So the corporate email address isn't always bulletproof dependent upon the situation. It isn't always available per system. So it's important to tie a lot of solutions together to achieve accurate outcomes. So with Boomi's new hire onboarding solution, the goal is to augment it to surface user engagement insights from public Slack channel posts after that new hire is provisioned with Slack, a very important component of this, because so we can effectively turn on that tracking and align the right data. The solution idea is to automate a data prep job in Boomi's data catalog and preparation service that joins data sets from 3 disparate systems and outputs those Slack comment details to a new destination system. So let's dig into that a little bit. First, source system that we're looking at is Slack comments. This is an AWS RDS Postgres database server that's sourced by a Boomi integration process. That is retrieving Slack comments and sending them to a Postgres table. Very simple capture, all powered by Boomi. The second system, employee user information, is also a separate database server instance, but it is an AWS RDS Postgres server sourced by a hub synchronization. So we have a case here where we're leveraging Master Data Hub to build golden records around the employee type. Salesforce and Slack are key contributors to this mastered employee record. So we can effectively match and merge that information, ensure it's consistent, and then synchronize that employee golden record data to another Postgres table. That is the source for this data prep job. And finally, new hire task information. This is a critical source. It serves as a new hire onboarding solution backend, and it is also a Postgres database instance. So the results of this data preparation job as part of the configuration was able to create a triple database server join. Remember, these are disparate instances in a very quick time frame, in less than an hour. When comparing that to building an integration process, you'd have to do a lot of document caching, you have to do a lot of repeated database lookups, so the performance may not be as you would expect for this vastness of data. So it was a really powerful outcome that we were receiving to be able to send these Slack insights into a destination MySQL table, which would then power and be surfaced to better understand metrics around comments and things I'll get into in the next part of this session. So I want to dig into the data prep job configuration. So when jumping over to the Boomi Data Catalog and Preparation service, we can open up a data prep job by going to this menu here, choosing under Prepare the jobs, and I've created, by adding a new prep job, this employee Slack engagement job here, which first requires you to select a data set. Any data set that's cataloged that you have access to with your user can be applied here. So we talked about the first source data set we're leveraging is this Slack post table from a test database instance. So that's the primary data set, and we talked about that triple database server join, and that's all configured under step 2. So when selecting that, it's really powerful in that there can be suggestions provided on what joins you could apply in a certain case, or you could choose as a user to build your own and choose from any data set that's cataloged. To configure the different joins, it's really important to design this out first to know exactly what you're going to need to join on. But if I were first kind of walk through this, if I edit this join here, it's joining to the Slack post data set based on an inner join condition. I've mostly designed inner join conditions in my prep jobs thus far, where you're just simply pulling in all of the related records based on this condition. So it's basically saying for all of the Slack comments that have been posted by a particular user ID, also join in from the Boomi employees data sourced by Master Data Hub, that relative employee golden record data based on the same Slack ID information. And then you can, I'll just cancel out of here, join in the other data sets. This is pulling in the new hire database server based on the email. So the email, the mastered email that's been recorded in the Boomi employees table with the new hire work email in the new hire onboarding backend database server. It's going to join in all of that relative information. And it's also important to join in the task information as well. You can see they're from the same data source that's identified here. This one is simply saying pull in the relative tasks and join where the UUID of the new hire is equal to the new hire ID assigned to that particular task. So it's essentially doing that cross-server join based on these conditions. The next step is to enrich the data, where certain functions can be suggested to you to help validate and enrich the data set that you'd want to output. You could build your own functions where leveraging the function library, there's a wealth of specific kind of string conditions and functions that you could apply here. Always really helpful to look at the details to see a working example. And if I were just to open up one example, this is a really powerful case where I'm looking at the comment field for all of the Slack comments and looking within that text to extract any @ mentions. So if you wanted from a new hire perspective to know who that person is shouting out the most as part of their Slacks, you could extract that and output that into a particular column using some regular extraction and replace functions here. So really powerful in what it offers. So every function that you build will create an output that you could output to a file or output into, say, this MySQL column, which I'm doing as part of this data prep job. And you can add as many as you need here, all of which would be assigned to its own unique column eventually. So yeah, let's look into that. If I choose the columns, it'll show all the functions that we built, selecting that. Also, across all of the different joined data sets, you can identify what fields that you want to eventually be outputted in step 7 here. So I'm pulling the Slack text comments from the Boomi employees, golden record information, first name, last name, and email, and then from the new hire onboarding solution across these two tables here, the new hire UUID and some of the task info. An important aspect of this within the scope of this new hire onboarding solution is to only retrieve the relative Slack comments for that new hire when they've been provisioned with Slack. So there is a task configuration item saying, oh, we've given this person, we provision them access to Slack. Going forward, now let's track the relative to Slack comments. And an action is required for that. So that where condition limits the data set versus looking across the entire pool of employees, so we can have a more performant job output and the surfacing of the right information. In the aggregate step, this is where you can start to include more functions which could benefit your output. If you wanted to do some average on certain fields that you've chosen, or count the number of distinct, I'm simply just selecting the fields that I've identified under choose columns as my output. If you were to want to do more averaging or counting on distinct, you would have to leverage the grouping conditions here to ensure that these are properly calculated. But just jumping into step number 7, all of the columns can then be outputted out to, say, an HDFS data store if you're doing some simple testing, where you could actually identify a local HDFS where this instance of Boomi data catalog and preparation is running. You could output it to, say, a solutions folder. And that actually could then be imported in cataloged, so then you could have visibility into the data set. So I'll show that after I run the job here. But basically, you could rearrange the columns through dragging to reorder them to make this a more functioning use case where I can send it to an insights backend that can then be where we can surface up different metrics. Could choose to output this to a MySQL table. So when choosing MySQL as an output type, you can identify the source that's cataloged within the service, identify the schema that's a part of that, and the output destination table where you'd want to send these values, and choose if you want to insert or overwrite what's in that target table. I found that you'd want to create a target table within, say, like a MySQL instance or a Postgres instance, where the output columns align quite directly to that table structure. And that way, it's just a very direct mapping. I mean, you can, again, choose to reorder the columns to align accordingly, but I find it's good just to have them direct. And this is something that you could eventually schedule to run on a certain frequency interval down to a minute to ensure that data is up to date so you can surface the right metrics. If you were to run this particular job, it triggers a job execution and sends you over to the activities section of the service, where you can track all of the logs, and provides a summary. So as this job runs, you can get an understanding through scrolling through about the relative number of records it's retrieving and having to process and join. And then as it works through to build the output, you have real-time insight into that. Once the job is complete, you'll notice that there are more tabs that pop up at the top here. If we look at the output, it will actually fetch the relative data set into this view here. For the purpose of testing, I've grabbed my personal relative information in a dev environment with some sample posts, and it pulls, assuming that I'm a new hire, my relative information, new hire tasks that are connected to me, saying that Slack has been provisioned, and the relative text output. And then it also, if there's an @mention of another Slack user that's not myself, using that function that I built in the enrich step, it will include that Slack ID, which through the power of Boomi's data catalog and preparation service, you could build certain workflow scenarios and compounding prep jobs that could then allow you to join in that relative Slack information so you can understand quantity or counts on who's mentioned the most. So it's a tremendous amount of opportunity here just by building out this prep job. So in summary, just wanted to note, as you're building out your data prep job, running the job out to HDFS proved quite powerful, just to ensure that the data that you're expecting through certain test scenarios is what you're looking for. You may hit on certain format exceptions in the data, and these logs were critical for troubleshooting and really understanding the relative counts of data that you're working with. And also, if you're cataloging the output data set back in the catalog service, it will surface some quick insights for you that could lead to more evolution of those jobs. For example, just by looking at the distinct counts of comments for a particular new hire, you can get a sense that there were a number of cases where a user joined a new channel, simply basing on the formatting of that type of post. Or if a person had left a channel, which could lead to more health insights, or Slack health insights that you're looking for. So it's been a really exciting opportunity to get to explore data catalog and preparation in this way, and excited to roll out new solutions. So thanks a lot for watching this session.